Welcome to the listening section of the TOEFL mock test, brought to you by Spinta. This section measures your ability to understand conversations and lectures in English. In this section, you will listen to several conversations and academic lectures. Each conversation and lecture is followed by a number of questions. You will hear each conversation or lecture only one time. You may take notes while you listen. You may use your notes to help you answer the questions. Some of the questions will replay part of the audio for you. Answer the questions based on what is stated or implied by the speakers. You must answer each question before moving on. You cannot return to previous questions in this section.
Good morning. Today I want to talk about ecosystem restoration and rewilding, two approaches conservationists use to recover degraded landscapes and restore ecological function. I will focus on definitions, common methods, and several case studies that illustrate benefits and trade-offs. By the end, you should understand when to use passive restoration versus active interventions and why some projects emphasize species reintroductions. First, restoration ecology aims to return an ecosystem to a previous or desired state, emphasizing processes such as nutrient cycling, primary productivity, and native species composition. Rewilding is a related concept that often centers on restoring large-scale processes by reintroducing key species, especially keystone species. We can think about restoration methods along a spectrum. On one end is passive restoration, which means removing pressures like overgrazing or pollution and allowing natural succession to proceed. On the other end is active restoration, which includes planting native species, regrading soils, or reintroducing animals. Passive restoration is cost-effective in many cases. For example, when grazing pressure is removed from a prairie, native grasses and wildflowers may recover over years without planting. But passive approaches are slower and may not work where the seed bank is lost or invasive species dominate. Active restoration is more expensive and labor-intensive, but it is necessary when ecosystems have passed ecological thresholds. Techniques include direct seeding, transplanting sod, soil amendment, and assisted migration, which I will explain shortly. A key concept is resilience, the capacity of an ecosystem to absorb disturbance and still maintain function. Restored systems should ideally regain resilience so they can cope with future stress like drought or pest outbreaks. Let me give you 3 case studies. First, mangrove restoration in Southeast Asia. Communities have planted thousands of hectares of mangroves to protect coasts from storms, support fish nurseries, and sequester carbon. Success depended on matching species to hydrology and engaging local stakeholders. Second, prairie restoration in the North American Midwest. There, restoration practitioners combine passive techniques with targeted burning and reseeding to recover pollinator habitat. Fire is used to reduce invasive shrubs and promote native perennial grasses. Third, the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park. When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone, elk behavior changed and willow and aspen regeneration increased, a trophic cascade that improved riverbanks and increased biodiversity. This Yellowstone example shows how a single keystone species can trigger indirect effects across an ecosystem. It is important to note that rewilding can produce complex social and ecological outcomes, and it is not always straightforward. Now about assisted migration. This technique involves moving populations to areas where climate will be suitable in the future when natural dispersal is too slow. It is controversial because moving organisms risks unintended consequences, such as introducing pests or causing competition with resident species. Scientists recommend assisted migration only when climate change makes historical ranges unsuitable and when careful risk assessment and monitoring are possible. It should be a last resort rather than the first option. Another major theme is connectivity. Fragmented habitats lose species over time. Creating corridors or stepping stones between habitat patches increases gene flow, reduces local extinctions, and makes restoration more successful. Economic and social factors matter too. Restoration projects that involve local people, provide alternative livelihoods, or incorporate traditional ecological knowledge tend to be more sustainable. Payment for ecosystem services schemes can incentivize landowners to restore wetlands or forests. In practice, effective restoration blends passive and active methods, considers landscape connectivity, and weighs social and ecological trade-offs. Monitoring and adaptive management are critical because ecosystems respond in unexpected ways. To conclude, ecosystem restoration and rewilding are powerful tools for recovering biodiversity and ecosystem services, but they require clear goals, appropriate techniques, and long-term commitment. Thinking in terms of processes rather than just species lists improves outcomes. Next week, we will look at restoration metrics and how to design monitoring programs. For now, consider which restoration approach would best suit a local degraded wetland and why.
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone, elk behavior changed and willow and aspen regeneration increased, a trophic cascade that improved riverbanks and increased biodiversity.
For more TOEFL mock tests as well as IELTS and Cambridge practice, visit www.spinta.org. We provide updated tests every single day, AI feedback for your speaking and writing responses, and access to a wide range of high-quality mock tests to help you prepare with confidence.